Hi, this is Eric Johnson, and today we're going to talk about the number 3 way to kill your new turbo, and that is low or no motor oil. It is not the most common, but it is pretty devastating, and it can happen relatively quickly, or it can actually happen in the long term, and just depending on the way you drive your car. One is if you have an installation failure, the other one is the way you drive your car. So to explain this a little better, I've got an example of a turbo shaft and turbo bearing. So this bearing here, it doesn't actually spin, it actually rides in there. It's just a brass ring that sits inside of the shaft, sits inside of it. It's just a brass ring. Now the turbo shaft will spin at about 60,000 RPMs to about 130,000 RPMs. And what happens is the actual bearing is actually your motor oil. Your oil will go into this hole, and it'll fill the oil around here. There's some rifling or spiral grooves cut in here, and will actually fill the gap between the shaft and the compressor and the bearing. And what happens is it'll be spinning. Now, if you have a low oil situation, the brass and the metal shaft will come in contact, and then it'll start to gall. And once that happens, your turbo's done, because as soon as it galls, all the grooving, spiral grooving and everything will disappear or get filled with metal flakes, or there'll be metal flakes on your shaft, and then you can no longer get an even coating of oil, and then eventually within a few seconds your turbo's done. It'll just break and seize up inside there, or seize up or stop spinning, one of the two. Now that is one part of low oil. The other factor is on the thrust bearing here. As you can see, if you look at it, there's actually ramping on the thrust bearing, and those holes will allow the oil at high pressure to flow through the grooves, and the ramping which will cause the motor oil to get sucked up on the thrust collar, and that is what provides your bearing seat, your bearing. So this does not spin, it sits in a stationary area. So the only actual true bearing is the motor oil that's running against your thrust bearing and your thrust collar. So motor oil is very, very important to have a coating of motor oil. If you don't have a coating of motor oil, your turbo's done, I mean, in a matter of seconds. So the reason this is on there is because the reason why we have these failures is because sometimes during an installation somebody will not put a fitting tight or forget to put a fitting in and start the car, and then they have dripping oil or something like that, and then pretty soon, if you get low oil situation, your turbo will fail. If you get no oil, your turbo will fail right away. So after installation, make sure that you start the car, or first you inspect to make sure that all your lines are connected correctly. Then you want to start the car and make sure that there's no dripping of oil or anything like that. Also, make sure that you check your oil on a regular basis. If you're driving along and you have a low oil situation and your pump sucks up an air bubble because there's no oil in your oil pan, chances are your turbo's going to be done in a matter of seconds, especially if you're doing 50, 60 miles an hour or on the drag strip or something like that. Turbos cannot handle no oil situations, so don't let it happen to you. Also, always wait 5 seconds before you take off. So you start your car, let the oil pressure build up into your turbo, and then take off. If you start the car and immediately floor it, rev the engine, or take off, you can also start spinning the turbo faster when there's no oil. There's enough oil left in the turbo to keep a light spinning and idle for a few seconds before the pressure hits it. But if you don't allow the oil to build up, your turbo's done. So that's the number 3 way to kill your turbo. We'll talk to you next time on the number 4 way to kill your turbo, which is always using the correct oil, which is synthetic oil. So we hope you enjoyed this. If you have any more questions, you can feel free to call us or contact us at jmturbocoopers.com, or email us at support@jmturbocoopers.com. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks a lot for your interest.